Hey guys, it's Mishael, and welcome to yet another beautiful day that God has blessed us with. I was reading the book of Daniel, and in the very beginning, it kind of gives you an overview of things in the study Bible that I'm reading. How Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego were captives in the land of Babylon, but they were working under the king, Nebuchadnezzar. And I was reading through the interpretation of chapter 1, verse 7. So we all know about like the story of Daniel, how, Daniel in the lion's den, and how Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego were thrown into the fiery furnace because they were not serving the Babylonian god and refused to bow down to the golden statue that they had. But we don't usually talk about how all of this stuff began. So as I was reading, I thought it was interesting because I can see a lot of this in today's culture. King Nebuchadnezzar actually changed the names of Daniel and his friends because he wanted to make them Babylonian. If you read in verse 7 in chapter 1, it says, "To them the chief of the eunuchs gave names. He gave Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abed-Nego." So basically they originally had their Hebrew names, but the Babylonian king changed their names so that they could assimilate to Babylonian culture. And when you look at their Hebrew names, what it says in here, it says that Daniel meant God is my judge in Hebrew. But then when they changed it to Belteshazzar, it means Bel, protect his life. And Bel is also Marduk, which is the chief Babylonian god. And it's interesting because there's a lot that goes into a name. And when you go from God is my judge to another God is something that is protecting you because there is something to assimilate to the culture of Babylonians, they really just wanted them to start there and really just change their identity. And I see that going on a lot today. Satan is definitely busy, and it's not necessarily in the name change of people, but it's in the name change of things. So when we think about there's certain sins, there are sins where instead of calling it something that it is, which is a sin, it's something that's changed to something more acceptable. So you have to be politically correct about it instead of letting them know under conviction, hey, what you're doing is wrong. You should not be proud of the sins that you are doing, and it should not be something that you promote out there in public as something that is acceptable because you've now changed the name and made it seem like it's something that is less evil than what it actually is. So I just thought that was interesting. That's a part of the book of Daniel that, we kind of just read over until we get to the main stories about the lion's den and the fiery furnace. But it's very important to know that these men had to undergo things like that, and still they were faithful to their God, which is the God of the Israelites, our God that we serve. And they faced all these trials, all of this judgment from the people, but there is a verse in the Bible that says, do not fear the person who can destroy the body, but fear the person who can destroy both body and soul. And I'll link that in the description box because it slips on mind the actual chapter and verse in the Bible. But that is important for you guys to remember. When the world is trying to get you to assimilate to certain things and to certain sins and to certain cultures that are going to compromise your relationship with God, then really just think about that before you do it, because there's a lot of deception out there that the devil has thrown out to make it seem if I change the name of, say for example, we'll say yoga, for example. Yoga, we call it a form of exercise where you just stretching your body, you're getting some exercise, strengthening your body, and working different muscle groups. But in reality, it's actually an ancient Eastern tradition that is allowing you to serve and worship other gods.
There's far more to yoga than just exercise. Basically what you're doing is you're standing in these poses and you are making your body an antenna for spiritual demons to possess you. That is the purpose behind doing these poses. You are worshiping deities. And when you are doing these poses, you are actually acting out the Bhagavad Gita stories. You're acting out demon gods fighting each other in ancient battles, and that's what you're doing. And so there's a spiritual element to that.
Just do some more research on certain things before you just go out and do it, just because people are labeling it as something different, because you're really assimilating to a whole different culture that is not, if you are a Bible-believing Christian, is not something that is really your own. And there's just a lot of like hidden things out there that we just don't know about. So do your research prior to doing things. Definitely pray prior to doing things and seek God's discernment so that you don't fall into these traps and end up doing things that you didn't realize were actually going against your God and not doing what his will is for you. Because this can lead to further compromise and things that seem innocent. It can lead to further compromise in your walk with Yah, and that can just make it more difficult to really hear. You're basically like hardening your heart towards what Yah would be able to normally reach out to you and tell you, and hardening your heart to the Holy Spirit. So I just encourage you guys to just stay encouraged despite things that are going on in the world. If people come down on you and say, hey, I don't know why you acting like this. I don't know why you are deciding to not do certain things that you used to do before that seem like an innocent thing, because now you've done your research and you realize, hey, this is not of God. Just withstand it, just like these men did. Remember, like, they went through lots of trials. Daniel was almost killed twice. And he was still able to be spared by Yah because he was following Yah's will. And you never know, like, you may be made an example out of as well. And people will come to know Yah through you because of the fact that you withstood all of the judgments and trials that other people were trying to place on you for not assimilating to something that is not of Yah. So thank you guys for listening to the end. I hope you guys got something out of this. I'll see you guys in the next one, and take care. So just really quick, because I forgot to mention, if you are someone who is struggling with something like this, besides doing research, one of the things that is mentioned in this Bible is that it's easier to resist temptation if you have already thought through your convictions prior to the temptation arising. So what you basically have to do is, we will get in trouble if we have not previously decided where to draw the line. If you know where you're going to draw the line on certain things, then you'll know straight up, like, all right, like, if someone brings this up to me, then I need to let them know, hey, I need to do my research first before I just go out and just join them in whatever it is. That way you'll automatically have in your head, like, hey, I'm going to obey God and I'm going to do things that are of his will. And I'm going to make sure that I don't compromise on that. Like, you have to decide, I'm not going to compromise on that. If you're not going to compromise on if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, like, I want you to curse your mom out. If someone tells you that and you already know deep in your mind and you don't even have to think about it, like, hey, I'm not gonna ever do that, then you need to do the same thing with God. So just kind of like jot down in a journal or make a mental note, whatever you have to do to set these boundaries, do them, and then it'll become easier and easier as you practice them. Just like other boundaries that you've set, it'll become easier and easier to practice these that you have set aside for God. Thank you guys.